issues related to demolition and how it's impacting the neighborhood that Councilman Gonzalez is the councilman for, and appreciate he's on. Just to kind of give you a run of show, and I'll be back. I'm going to be participating throughout the call. But initially, I'll run it to John to just give an overview of the way that questions have been pre-submitted, and then the team at the DOT will address those questions. And then if anyone has not had a question that they wanted to have asked that had not been addressed, there'll be an opportunity in two ways. One is to go to the Q&A button and submit your question in writing, or you can hold on and there'll be a process where you can raise your hand and then we'll acknowledge you as well. So that's the way that we'll handle it. This is, I know that there's some media on the call today, but we're going to restrict the conversation directly to the impacted community. And with that, I just wanted to hand it over to the councilman. Thank you for being on the call, and thank you for your advanced work on this, John.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, and thank you all for attending tonight's community meeting. Following last Friday's meeting, I want to give credit where credit is due and express my sincere appreciation to Governor McKee and Director Alviti for being so responsive to our calls and hosting another additional meeting tonight to hear directly from the public. As you may know, the overnight demolition in Fox Point at the direction of the governor has been temporarily paused so that the community can have their questions addressed at this community meeting. And I've heard the concerns and thoughts directly from many of my Fox Point constituents loud and clear. We have submitted those concerns and questions to Rhode to ensure that those questions are answered. I know that this is a tenuous situation for all of us, and I'm grateful for your advocacy, your constructive dialogue, and your engagement. In collaboration with the governor and DOT, our office and I personally knocked at the local level and left flyers for impacted residents, informing them of tonight's meeting. Over 100 residents in the immediate area of the demolition filled out a survey that our office helped facilitate, and folks have pre-submitted their thoughts, questions, and concerns for this evening. So if you stay on the line, there will be an additional opportunity for those who didn't pre-submit questions to ask additional live questions that were not covered. But we have submitted questions in advance. And again, I appreciate the responsiveness of the governor and the director, and we thank you all for taking the time this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Alviti.
Sweet. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight's program will allow for us to address many of the questions, as Councilman Gonzalez said, questions that have been posed to us prior to this, and also have real-time conversation directly with all of you. Once we begin the live question and answer period, I'm going to go through a number of questions that were posed to us during the last couple of weeks. And then after I do that, we'll begin with the governor and myself answering questions real-time live. There are two ways that folks on this meeting can ask their questions. You can either use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to submit a question in writing by typing your question in, and those will be monitored by our folks here and posed to me and the governor for an answer to you all. In addition to that, you can use the raise your hand button if you'd like to verbally ask us your question. And on a first in, first out basis, we'll call on folks that are raising their hand to answer your questions during that portion of tonight's meeting. So to begin, let's dig right into some of the questions that folks asked. And kind of, since there are a lot of questions that were submitted, many of them falling into similar categories. I'm going to start off with the most questions that we got were with regard to dust, noise, and vibration in the area of the construction, particularly for folks that live right nearby the construction. So with regard to the environmental controls, as part of this project, the contractor is responsible for implementing certain environmental controls. Those controls range from debris shielding to make sure that no debris is scattered into the neighborhood, filters in drain and inlet protection to prevent pollutants from migrating into the waterways. Contractor will also is required to provide misting and spraying of concrete as it's being demolished to assure that the dust that comes from that activity is contained on site and is not allowed to migrate off the site. In addition, when they're utilizing saw cutting machines, they are equipped with dust mitigation systems. And generally, any dust that falls on the ground that may be tracked off by vehicles, particularly construction vehicles, anti-tracking pads are being laid down for containing that kind of construction debris and dust to the work site. Any drilling equipment that they're using is equipped with HEPA vacuum filters to minimize and prevent concrete dust from coming from the demolition activities, and in order to cut off migration of dust outside of the work area. During the last several weeks, we did get some reports from neighbors that reported dust on the project migrating onto their property. At that time, we implemented additional controls on the contractor by requiring them to add additional dust control measures and additional water cannons to the areas that they are doing their demolition, and they complied with that. And we have since installed a dust monitoring measurement device that will measure dust in the area of the construction to make sure that the air quality is in conformance with the 24-hour average ambient air quality recommended by the EPA and FHWA. In addition to dust mitigation, vibration is being monitored during the demolition with sensors in and around the neighborhood. All vibration levels have been within the industry standard limits for demolition of 0.5 inches per second. We conducted pre-construction inspections on many of the structures around, I think within a 200-foot zone of the construction. And we will also perform those same kind of inspections after construction to make sure that the construction activity did not result in any damage to nearby properties. The noise mitigation is difficult. Knocking down a massive concrete structure takes heavy equipment with high impact in order to break it apart. And the good news is that the worst is over. We have only 3 more nights of jackhammering related noise that you folks in the area have been enduring during the last several weeks. Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Sunday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night, October 20th through the 22nd, are the last 3 nights that the contractor is going to be allowed to do nighttime hammering activities, which is the noisiest of activities and has caused the most amount of complaints and has been bothersome to you folks that live nearby. After those 3 nights, The entire rest of the project will be done during the day. All of that heavy equipment hammering will be done during the day for the rest of the project. And as time goes on, the activities will get further and further away from the houses as they work from the two ends inward to the middle of the waterway. We are going to restrict that heavy hammering to take place during the daytime shifts that they'll be working between 6 a.m. in the morning and 9 p.m. at night. So between 9 p.m. at night and 6 a.m. the next morning, there will no longer be any heavy hammering in the area. There will still be construction that will be ongoing, but it'll be the regular kind of construction activity with the traditional kind of noise that comes from lower impact or no impact type construction activities. The work that we did do overnight was done purposely during the night because our traffic engineers worked with the traffic engineers in the city to determine that the gridlock that would be created during the day by blocking those vital roads where that demolition is happening during the daytime would have created a terrible condition for people not only who live in the area, but also emergency vehicles and other commuters that use that road on a daily basis. The good news is we're down to the last 3 nights. And we're sorry that we have to bother you for those 3 nights, but it's necessary in order to get those structures that are over Gano Street down. All of the rest of the construction will be either not over roads or over water, in which case all of those activities can be done during the day without having to worry about the gridlock that would be created from blocking traffic. Per FHWA guidelines, we had a question about relocating anyone living close to the bridge. As I said, we're down to the last 3 days, but relocation for vibration standards, particularly under the limits that are relatively high set by FHWA guidelines, they would not support or participate in relocation costs for those kinds of activities. Other questions came in about accountability. A number of questions came in about the evidence, reparations, about employee actions, and those kinds of questions. Those questions have to do with the litigation. And I know that it's frustrating to hear that as an answer when questioned about these kinds of things, but the governor hired a capable litigation team to sort out questions of liability and accountability for the Washington Bridge. Legal action against those deemed responsible is proceeding through the legal process. As in all pending legal matters, we will not be commenting on these issues tonight, and any inquiries regarding evidentiary or other kinds of legal matters should be directed to the legal team. Questions came in about whether or not temporary bridges built over the Seekonk River or the Army Corps of Engineers have been called in on this project. We have had calls and conferences with the Army Corps of Engineers, but those are within the scope of what the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for, which is permitting of the navigable waterways. The Army Corps of Engineers takes care of navigable waterways and any obstruction of those by either fallen debris or fallen bridges, and they will become active. However, with regard to the construction of the new bridge or the demolition of this bridge, the Army Corps of Engineers does not have responsibility for, nor do they make it a practice of involving themselves in the either demolition or reconstruction of state-owned bridge unless it in some way is impacting on their navigable waterway. In fact, when the Army Corps of Engineers itself builds or has any of the bridges that they have jurisdiction over, they hire outside consultants to design them and private contractors to build them for them. Very much in the same way that we are conducting this project with consultants and private contractors. We were asked some questions about, with the demolition of the old bridge and the construction of the new bridge, whether or not any consideration is being given to alternative transportation options, like dedicated bus lanes, et cetera, et cetera. And the answer to that is yes. Although we're not yet in the design stage, we will be looking at those alternatives and how they would impact not only future traffic, but also how they would impact the cost and the construction of the new bridge. But they will all be under consideration particularly during the RFP process. And we'll be looking at long-range solutions for those. There were several questions about the footings and the piers, the existing piers, and whether or not those are going to be demolished or whether or not they're going to be reused. The answer is that they are going to be demolished, that during the RFI process, we conferred with 10 of the most knowledgeable and most expert bridge builders in this country, if not the world. And some of the exchange of information that we had with them during our request for information phase that we implemented was whether or not the companies thought it worthwhile to try to preserve those old footings and those old piers. The answer nearly unanimously was that no, it is not. The ability for them to be able to test and determine the viability of those existing footings that are over 60 years old, as to whether or not they would be viable for use in the future, is a risk that most contractors would not involve themselves in. Further conversations with the FHWA and our experts determined that the proper way to move forward with this is to completely demolish the existing piers and footings and to build brand new ones for the brand new bridge superstructure. And that's the path that we are taking. Some questions came in regarding the aesthetics and the design of the new bridge. While that's not a demolition question, I will say that there are historic features on the existing bridge that will be preserved, and they will be preserved once the new bridge is constructed. In terms of its construction, the actual design of it will be brought into focus during the RFP process, the procurement process, with the various firms that are competing. They will be submitting a design to us when they're competing with each other so that we can determine which of those designs are the best ones to implement. There were some questions that came about the weigh in motion and vibration monitoring systems, what they're going to be used for and whether or not they indicate that there are any problems with the existing bridge that we're using in the westbound direction, on the eastbound direction and westbound direction. The answer to that is they are being implemented and put in place in order to monitor vibrations and stresses and strains in the structure as a precautionary measure only. In fact, we have had the bridge inspected 3 different times and analyzed by 2 different companies to determine whether or not the existing structure is suitable to use for the duration of the time that we'll be using it as a temporary bypass for traffic during the construction of the new bridge. They all determined that the bridge is in good health. There are no defects that we need to worry about. And this monitoring system is an insurance policy for us and you, the public, that we will be keeping a very close eye on whether or not there are any changes to that, however minute they may be, so that we can address them quickly, effectively, and without the interruption of traffic and/or commuters. So the system is there only to make sure we keep the bridge safe, not because we have detected any defects in it. The question came up is whether or not the concrete being demolished from the Washington Bridge has been tested for asbestos. The construction of the bridge that we're knocking down has a type of concrete that does not contain asbestos. So there is no asbestos on the site, nor is there any present in the concrete that we're demolishing. Question came up as to why, for the demolition, we are rehiring a company that built a substandard performance building in the first bridge. The answer is that no companies have been debarred from doing work for DOT on any new bridge or road construction by any regulatory or legal authority. The only company that has been debarred from RIDOT's construction activities is Barletta Heavy Division, who debarred themselves as part of a voluntary agreement with the Department of Justice. Other than that company, no other companies have been identified. And under FHWA funding guidelines, we cannot discriminate on the basis of arbitrary debarment. In fact, every state in the country, every DOT in the country does business on a regular basis on heavy and highway projects with companies with which they're engaged in claims or who have claims against them. It is common practice in this industry, and we are following the national standard. A question came in, why are we involving a company who dumped toxic soil in a construction project in Rhode Island? And the answer to that is we are not. We are not doing business with any companies who have involved themselves with dumping toxic soil. The names, someone asked what the names of those involved in tonight's presentation. And with me here tonight, I have Pamela Cotter, Chief Planner, Stephen Sutherland, Project Manager, David Walsh from our Neighborhood Relations group within Project Manager, and other top project-related personnel with me. There were questions about how many people signed up for the meeting and why participants weren't allowed to ask questions and why it was held on a Friday night. I think those questions have been answered during various press conferences we have had. However, the governor saw fit to schedule a second meeting tonight with you all to do precisely all of those things prior to the resumption of noisy activities at the site. And that's what we're here to do tonight. question came in regarding the timeline for the demolition. What is the timeline and whether or not it's been affected by the pause. Well, of course, the pause for several weeks will cause that same delay in the time. So instead of completing the demolition of the superstructure that this contractor that we have a contract with now was scheduled to finish it by the end of this year. That will now extend for those 4 weeks or 5 weeks in beyond the date that they were originally scheduled to complete it. But that's it. It'll just pretty much take as much longer as the delay took itself. And that stands to reason. However, I will say this, our project managers have been in this situation before where there have been delays, whether they be imposed or by natural cause. And they always work with the contractor to try to make up that time and still get the project done. And they're working with the contractor as we speak right now to see if there are ways to align the work between now and January so that we can bring that schedule back a bit. And we'll keep you all posted about that. So the superstructure will take place during that time and be completed by then. The change order that we issued for the additional work to demolish the piers and the substructures will take from February of next year, this coming February, until December of next year. That does not mean that the construction that will be happening as a result of the award of the new bridge contract will be delayed for that period. Because much of the work on the demolition of the piers and the work of a new contractor that we bring on to build the new bridge will overlap. The new contractor will be able to start their work at least 6 months before the demolition is completed, and they'll be able to mobilize their workforce, their equipment, to finalize their designs, to make their permit applications, and secure the environmental permitting, and to possibly begin prefabrication of various components used in the bridge that can be completed in a manufacturing facility. So we don't expect there to be a delay. In fact, because we're now moving that demolition out of the construction phase and into the demolition contract, we expect that the actual demolition that will take place sooner than if it were made part of the construction project. We will continue to post updates, not only of these questions and the project itself, on our webpage at washington-bridge.com, where not only will you all be able to see the progress, but also be able to look at the various questions and answers that came in here or from this night forward, or as a result from this night. All of the questions and all of the answers will be posted there. And there will also be a portal there for you all if you have follow-on questions or folks couldn't attend this meeting or think of questions after this meeting. We're going to leave that portal open there for you to post questions, and our staff will answer them as we receive them. That pretty much concludes at broad strokes, the questions that came in the major categories and the answers for them. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to the governor to begin the live session.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And we've got a lot of work ahead of us here. I'm looking at the entries of questions, and I'm going to kind of go over one at a time. And Peter, you and your team should be ready to, prepared to answer those. And then we'll continue to go through the questions that have been put on the, on the site, the written, and then we'll go to questions that people have not had their answers, the question answered during this process. We'll go to the, the allow, have people talk to us in terms of their questions. All right. So I'm going to just take them one at a time here, Peter. And I think that it's great that people are putting questions in here, and I'll just use the first name rather than the first and last name. I appreciate the fact that people are putting the names in here, because good question here on the first one, which you've gone over a little bit, but I think even if you're going over it again, try to summarize the answer, not just say we already answered that question. All right. So Andrew is asking, as a resident directly next to the construction site, what is being done to mediate the harmful dust, and as well as the impact of the jarring, shaking has had on our host structures. And if Andrew's still listening, we'd love to maybe go through the councilman, get his ear address. I'd love to go out and visit there with the councilman. But that's the question that we're asking. Andrew's asked that question at 6:04 this evening.
Yes, Governor. The answer to that is the vibration is being monitored. We have a number of sensors, vibration sensors, that we have deployed through the neighborhood to make sure that the vibrations are at or below the regulatory standards. So far, they have been. We also took a survey of the area, of buildings in the area, to determine their condition prior to the beginning of the project, the demolition project. At the end of the project, we will be sending the same inspectors out to take a look at those same buildings to make sure that there is no change in each of the buildings that are nearby that may have been impacted by any vibrations. And in those cases, we'll be taking a building by building inventory of that, and we'll be interacting with the owners of those properties to make sure that either no damage has been done, or if there has been damage, that it's remedied. In terms of the dust, we have implemented a dust measuring system that will alert us and the contractor of any instances where dust is migrated off the work site at levels in excess of the regulatory requirements. So we're monitoring those. We will keep a very close eye. We implemented additional mitigation requirements for the contractor that they have complied with to make sure that the dust doesn't, not only is not harmful if it goes over the project limits, but doesn't get over the project limits in the first place. That's the measure that we're holding the contractor to.
Okay, Peter, and I think Pamela Carter mentioned that she might want to weigh in on this question. I don't know if that's true or not from your office.
So Governor, I would just say that we got a follow-up question from Andrew that's further down in the chat. He just wanted a little more detail. And he also asked, when do you expect the new bridge to be done and functional?
Okay, the new bridge, the date of the construction of the new bridge is going to be determined along with how much it's going to cost and what it's going to look like. The scope, the schedule for its construction, and the cost are all going to be determined competitively between the companies that are competing for this project, beginning now, or actually yesterday, with the release of the request for qualifications from contractors that are interested in bidding on this, all the way to June when we make the final selection. During that period of time, the companies will be submitting their technical proposals, what materials they're using, what they're going to cost, and how long precisely it's going to take to build it. At the end of that process, we're going to know precisely how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to build it, and what the bridge is going to look like. And that becomes the contract that the contractor will be responsible for meeting. And we'll keep folks posted during the progress and up until the point where we're able to provide that information as a result of the awarded contract.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So I'll just continue, one question at a time, and then you guys can answer it. And then if it's repetitive, then try to consolidate the question down to a shorter time frame. But we'll address each one of these questions one at a time. Right now, we got 26 comments or questions on. The comments I'll read, but if there's not a question to be answered, then we'll just let the comments stand. Has the state been able to quantify or at least estimate the overall economic cost of the bridge closure, including demolition and traffic effects?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Governor?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have these numbers, but the question is, until we actually total it all up, which is, as we speak, and it's good that we got the, on the cost issue, it's good that the federal delegation has assisted us with identifying almost $220 million of dollars that's going to help us with the cost, which is really something we didn't have back in April. So the question is, by Michael, has the state been able to quantify or at least estimate the overall economic cost of the bridge closure, including demolition and traffic effects?
So the overall economic cost, including impacts on traffic, no, we have not.
No.
The cost that were most important to us right now is the cost to rebuild the new bridge. And as I said, the actual cost of doing that, we will be working with several contracting companies who will be competing for the project to determine what that actual cost will be in a contract at the award in June.
And Peter, so we do have the cost of the demolition. We don't have the cost. I haven't heard it yet of the, taking the substructure out. But there is monthly reports that your office is providing to me, my office, as well as the General Assembly, correct?
Yes, and we'll post all of that information on our website, again, at washington-bridge.com. We will provide all of the funding information and all of the expense information of the contract and the cost. In fact, we'll be putting the change order cost for the substructure on our website, along with the information on the existing contract cost and any differential between what the original contract cost was as a result of the delay, the temporary delay that we had. We're working on that number right now, and as soon as we get it, we'll post that there also.
Yes, and so the next, it's kind of anonymous because it's kind of more of a handle name here that I don't really know how to pronounce, but who is responsible to ensure that these regulations are followed? I imagine it must be the regulations relative to the, well, I guess in general, I don't, it's not a specific here.
Yep. So DOT.
The monitoring, Peter, I think probably is what's being asked here.
Yep. So the monitoring equipment that's being put in place, the data is provided to DOT for us to review. And we, from time to time, will call DEM when we feel the need that, or if the data indicates that there's an infraction or the company is nearing the limits. We'll bring DEM in to take a look at the site, to take a look at the activity, in order to determine what additional controls we want to put on that. But we're keeping a very close eye on all of that right now. I'm sorry, Governor, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Director. Director, the next question is from William. Will this air and vibration sensor data be posted anywhere publicly during the duration of the work? Yes.
Again, we're using our washington-bridge.com website as the a place that people could go and look at that data along with any other data that we have relative to the site.
Okay, next question, and it's kind of a comment too, but there is a question in here from Justin. Who is responsible for the maintenance of construction zones and routes? Currently, traffic is diverted from the waterfront in East Providence to Valley Street. Again, this goes through this thing, but the question is it too much to expect the route to be paved before the traffic is diverted? I guess that has directly related to the Valley Street. And this is a user, there's so much cement dust on the linear bike path. This is a new one for us, that cyclists, including myself, are losing traction and going over on the approach to the bridge. Who's responsible for maintaining safe access for the bike paths? It looks like that's the central question here.
So the bike path is our responsibility. Ultimately, it's the contractor's responsibility to keep that clear of debris and/or any soil or dust that's on it. We will certainly have our project managers have the contractor address that and make sure that they put in place a routine cleaning of it so that it keeps it in a clean state.
Yeah, that's, Director, I think that's important. That's a good follow-up.
Yep.
Take a look at the bike path. We want to make sure that people are using it. If they choose to use it, then they use it safely, right? And if it's not safe, then you got to come up with some other options. So take a look at that. That would be great.
We will, Governor. The good news about that is that the demolition activity is starting in that area. And very soon we'll be moving out of that area. So there will be no further interruption. We did a lot of work to make sure that the bike path remained open even during the demolition, and we'll continue to do that. But as the demolition activity moves into the river and away from this area, there'll be little or no disruption and/or any debris on the bike path itself. But in the meantime, we're on it.
Yeah, next one, anonymous, more of a statement asking whether the Friday's meeting was a mistake to, or wasn't handled well. I'll say it publicly again. Yes, I don't think it was handled well, and that's why we're going to sit here and answer all the questions that are put in, and we appreciate the people who are responding. So, actually participating tonight. All right, and this goes on. This also from Kevin, related to the timing of the meeting. I think that we could have been a little more sensitive to the fact that it was a Jewish holiday, and we apologize for those who were offended. Next question here. Again, I think that you answered this question, Director, but let's go over it anyways. Why didn't you call the Army Corps of Engineers like Baltimore leadership did when the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed? Let me give a shot at this one too. I know there's been a lot of comparisons to Baltimore. We've been in direct contact with their procurement and the people who are managing that project. And I have been in contact with the governor as well, Wes Moore. And I think that there's certain details here that are not particularly correct. The way that they're handling it, they're doing the best they can. As we are, they're projecting, a date that's in 2028 to actually complete. I think that they're not ahead of us, and we're comparing notes. So if we're doing something that can be helpful to them, or they're doing something that can be helpful to us, we are in collaboration and contact with one another. But you can answer the question again: why did you call the Army Corps of Engineers, and in what capacity did you call them in on?
Right. I think when you look at the situation in Baltimore, the Army Corps of Engineers were called in primarily because the bridge collapsed into a navigable waterway. That was a major port for which the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction. So the removal of that debris from the navigable waterway in order to open up that channel back to commerce is the responsibility of the Corps of Engineers. That's why they were called in there. We do not have that similar circumstance here. No debris nor bridge fell into the navigable waterway. So the Corps of Engineers do not get involved in the reconstruction of a new bridge. nor would it be feasible for them to put something like a pontoon bridge or other kind of floating bridge over the Seekonk River, because the several lanes of traffic and the type of traffic that we would have to put over that would not be sustainable on that type of structure. However, the Corps of Engineers pretty much uses the same model and the same contractors and the same companies that we hired to design our bridges. They use them also. So we're pretty much using the same construction methods and delivery systems that the Corps of Engineers uses for their own bridge. In fact, recently, they just conveyed two of their major bridges in Massachusetts, the Sagamore and the Bourne Bridge. They conveyed those from their ownership to the DOT in Massachusetts for the state DOT to handle the reconstruction of. We here are handling it ourselves, and we brought in, Governor, 11 of the most expert bridge building companies in the world to sit with us for several weeks during the RFI process to go over with them and get their ideas on how we should move forward with the reconstruction of this. So we, in fact, did call in some of the world's best and most knowledgeable companies to help us determine how the new bridge should be built.
Up to you.
We're gonna go through a couple more questions that are written. I know there's a couple hands up, and we'll go to the hands. But we still have about 20 comments of questions that we'll go over. But let me take a couple more and see whether we can move ahead. The next one is from Anonymous, which is a personal attack on an individual that I'm not going to get involved in that. This is not the place for that as well. So I'll skip that one. The next question is, why is there no plan to put up a temporary bridge to east or west as communities in other states have? I think that I think the director just answered that pretty strongly. So I'll get to the next question here. This question is from Andrew. This is a good question that I think that I think you've gone over the timeline, but it's good to repeat the timeline that you director you believe is to be accurate. When will all the demolition be completed? And then the next question is basically, why is it going to take so long after the from now to actually start the new construction? I think both those questions are very appropriate.
Yes, I agree. So that the demolition of the superstructure, as you know, had been delayed for about 4 weeks. While we planned on completing that, what was the completion date on the demolition of
January
superstructure?
29th.
January 29th was our contract to complete that. That will be moved forward now by the amount of time we pause the project, but no more than that, okay? With regard to the substructure and the piers, that work will begin in February, and it will be completed by the end of December of 2025. That's the demolition. The contracting with the new contractor to design and build the new bridge, the timeline for that, again, was developed between now and June, when we're going to be interviewing these companies. They're going to be putting their technical proposals together. We'll be reviewing them. We'll be having discussions with all of them. And then by June, select the company that we are going to hire to build the project. And they'll start work immediately on that. That takes that long. That timeline we developed, again, from the RFI for a project of this scope, in order for the companies to have enough time to properly identify what their design is going to be and give us their best price proposal. If they're rushed into that, they may give us a price proposal that's either erroneous or too high. We're giving them the amount of time that they told us during the RFI process would give them sufficient time to fully develop their technical concepts, get designs done, bring on the various experts that they do in order to get us the absolute best proposals that they can by June. And we set that timeline after conferring with those 11 companies who have done business all over the world.
All right, Peter, Director, thank you. Next question, unfortunately, it's Kevin, and I really do apologize for the fact that we answer these legal questions as we're being, instructed. So it has to do with, have we stored evidence in terms of the legal case? We're going to have to defer that to our attorneys. Next one is from Ben, and Ben is suggesting we might want to sell some of the samples and use the proceeds for the Rhode Island Community Bank. I'll let that sit, but I think that's if any way that we can help a nonprofit by benefiting from this very difficult thing that all our families are going through, it's worth the thought. Let me I think we have a couple of questions, and then I'll get back to some of these written ones. Maybe we can take 2 or 3. If we can do that, sending back to DOT. Are you controlling the questions right now? I think there's a couple of hands up. And again, if we could have a question, that would be helpful. And respecting everybody's time that's on the call. We have over 150 people on the call right now. If we can kind of get to the point as quickly and as you can without speeding, going too fast. We want to listen to everything you got to say. So maybe you could call in maybe 2 or 3. I think there's 2 or 3 hands up, and I'll get back to these questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Governor. So the first one up is Mike Lucy. So I clicked allow to talk, and it should be asking you.
Mike, you're live. Ask your question.
Hi, guys. Governor and everyone, Director Alviti, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So apparently the demolition contract has been recently amended to include demolishing the existing bridge piers down to the riverbed. I'm just wondering why. Why not leave those old piers in place, cap them 6 feet above the water line, and then build a new bridge that spans from bank to bank with no new piers in the riverbed? This would avoid all the environmental complications and costs of disturbing the substantial riverbed sediments. It's only about 1,000 feet from bank to bank, an easily spannable distance. Has this been considered? And if not, why not?
All options have been considered. Again, we had 11 of the most expert companies, 10 of them multinational companies in bridge design and construction. They recommended to us the removal of those piers and those footings down to the mud level.
Why is that?
In addition to that, the Seekonk River is a navigable waterway. And we need to remove any obstructions in the path of any vessel.
Well, they're existing. Are they a hazard to navigation right now?
Say it again.
Existing.
Well, then right now they're standing above water, fully visible.
Sure.
And
Cap them 8 feet up and put some lights on them. Save a lot of money. Don't mess with the riverbed. Leave it alone. Has this been considered?
Mike, let me jump in. This is the governor, Dan. So I like what you're talking about. I will follow up and see whether there's any merit to what you're suggesting. But again, I know that.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I'll follow up, Mike. And if you leave a contact for us, if there's a way that you can do that without sharing everybody your phone number.
Absolutely.
We'll get back to you, Mike. So it's thoughtful. We appreciate it, and we'll try to get back to you with an honest assessment of your thought. Okay, Mike?
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there another hand up at all?
next hand.
Yep, the next person is Rob Cody. I'm gonna hit allow to talk. You should be able to unmute now, Rob.
Rob, you're live. Ask a question.
Yes, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity to ask you a question. And thank you, Governor, for holding this proceeding. So my original question, I think you kind of answered it. I was questioning the fact that under the Rhode Island Rules of Civil Proceeding, both the plaintiff and defendants have the right to obtain evidence for discovery. And I wanted to ask a question about why the broken connecting rod is moved, and no one has had the opportunity to inspect that. So I'll move that question because I think that what you addressed was that, part of litigation and so forth. But I was really curious is why the defendants can't inspect that broken connecting rod. But having said that, maybe you can answer that down the road. But I think I have another question. Is there any construction or repairs that are scheduled in the near future for the eastbound side of the bridge that may impact, traffic, whether it's day or night? Is there anything that's on the plate for any type of repairs?
So Rob, let me answer the first part and I'll send the second part to the director, okay? So again, that's certainly in the legal area. And I can just tell you that defendants have been, notified if there's anything that they should be notified on in terms of, any detail that the legal team has to notify them on. That's certainly part of the public information that has been talked about. So.
But Governor, with all due respect, in terms of discovery, if you have any component or piece of mechanical device, or whether it's concrete or connecting rods or broken rebar, I would think that in the effort to be able to defend themselves and to bring their case, that they would have to be able to have an opportunity at least to inspect these components. But when this particular component has completely disappeared from the bridge, which is the main reason why this bridge was shut down, it leads people to believe that there's something nefarious that is going on, because if in fact everything was on the up and up, I think that the answer would be from the DOT that, yes, this particular component has been removed for testing. Company XYZ has performed the testing where we're awaiting the results. It was removed by this individual by these methods, and it was removed on this date. And it seems to be a very, very simple question that, a broken piece of hardware, we don't know where it is, when it was removed, when it was taken, and what the results were. And when you look at DOT's own reports of December 8th, and you see the oxide scale in the fracture zone.
Rob, I'm hearing what you're saying. You certainly get into an area that the litigation team would address, and I would hope I think we've known each other for a while, and that I think that I'm not going to get involved in anything that's not on the up and up. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I think that there's a second piece of the question, Rob, about whether there's anything going on the east side of the bridge. Is that what your other question in the future?
Yes, Governor, thank you. Do we have anything scheduled for any type of repairs or any type of traffic impact or closures or anything on the east side in the near future?
Okay, Rob, we'll have the director answer that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So, Rob, we have had, during the last several weeks, repairs and maintenance activities happening at nighttime so that we minimize or eliminate any traffic impacts, except for the wee hours of the morning when there's little traffic. And usually it's just lane closures so that what little traffic is going by there can make their way through the work zone without there being any kind of congestion or inconvenience to the public. Those activities have included coming from the eastbound lanes and the westbound lanes of 195 in and around the Signature Bridge, the Highway Bridge, and bridges that are from that point back to 95. There is bridge joint maintenance that's taking place on those bridges. Those were contracted for long before the Washington Bridge closure was. They're part of routine and occasional contracts that we put out for that work. That work is going to progress in an easterly direction across the bridge during the next several weeks. And there will be several more bridge joints that are either maintained or repaired. Bridge joints are not a structural part of a bridge. We do not expect any closures of the bridge for that purpose, we may have lane closures overnight in order to allow the crews to repair those bridge joints. And they will be doing that work entirely at night. These are moving parts of the bridge. As you know, you have some knowledge of this kind of construction. Bridge joints are moving parts. They're like the brakes in your car or any other moving part in a machine. They wear out over time. And we have normal, routine, cyclical replacement of those joints on every bridge in the state.
Okay, thanks, Director. Thank you, Rob. Is there another hand up that we could go to? Or else we'll go back to the questions that have been, put in the.
There's another hand, Governor. It's Lonry. I'm gonna hit allow to talk.
Okay,
You don't-
Lonry, you're on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have two questions. The first is about dust. I'm one of the residents who found demolition dust on my property. And I just want to note that the issue before wasn't about the dust control measures. It was that the contractor wasn't following them or was following them inconsistently. So I want to know what you all are doing to ensure that they are complying with the dust control measures this time around.
I'm sorry, Lonnie, and then we'll give you a follow-up on it, but this is the governor. So if you leave your address, I'd love to stop by and take a look. Are you still having the issues with the dust, right now, or are you anticipating when we'll go through those, I think, 3 days of nighttime work? Are you getting dust right now? That'd be the first question.
No dust since demolition stopped, but plenty of dust while it was going on.
Okay, and I'll let the director answer the question about holding the contractor accountable for doing the job, that you're asking them to do. And then if you got a follow-up, happy to, have you ask that, okay?
Okay.
And if you get the address to us somehow, I don't need to do it over the phone here, but I'd love to stop by. I actually was in the neighborhood the other day, walking around, so I could get a good idea of what, physically it looked like before this call.
Okay.
Governor, we'll get Landry's address. In the meantime, what we've done, Landry, in order to clamp down on this dust control, we've required the contractor to install additional equipment. And in fact, 2 times the amount of equipment that would normally control the dust and use it. And our folks that are out there are monitoring to make sure that the contractor is not only using the original equipment, but the additional equipment that we made them install to make sure that the dust, the best solution to this dust problem is containing it at the work site itself. And that's
Director, let me just, we're trying to, I know we got a lot of people on there, so people are jumping off too, so we're trying to get moving along, and Landry has a second slide. But what I would suggest we do is we have the contractor visit Landry's house, and to see, prior to you doing the overnight demolition, to make certain determinations to see whether there's other things that can be done to protect Landry and the people that live in his house, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Landry, you got a second part of it? Thank you for
Yes.
being on, by the way.
Yes, it's about noise. It's honestly somewhat frustrating to hear you all describe the noise as bothersome or a nuisance when I consider it hazardous and dangerous. In our house and in the houses of my neighbors, the noise gets to about 70 to 80 decibels, which over the course of a night is dangerous, particularly for people with health conditions, particularly for kids. I myself my wife just gave birth a couple days ago. We have a little girl who's less, not even a week old. And so I want to know why you all consider this kind of noise safe and why you haven't considered relocating people closest to the demolition site, even if it doesn't meet the FHWA standards that would allow for relocation. It just seems like a thoughtful thing to do if you know that you are causing harm to people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Lonnie, one of the things that, first of all, if it's been described as anything other than what you're going through, that's certainly not, not our intent, and that's why I'm in the neighborhood, and that's why we're talking to you right now. We're trying to, for the people that are in the immediate neighborhood, this is why I delayed the overnight